What does one say to an ancient Nephilim ghost?
I suppose you start with...
And then we'll laugh. High five.
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy and we're back with another Diablo 4 video. Today we've had about a week of the season. I've been extremely casual in playing the game. I've had tons of IRL stuff. My sister got married, which was lovely, but I've had tons of stuff on, so I've not really been able to absolutely blast Diablo 4. But I'm pleased to say that Season 4 is certainly in a much better spot than possibly even I was anticipating before this launch. So this is a little bit of a feedback video, a little bit of a kind of talking about what's going on in the game. I think there's one absolutely ginormous, massive, huge, big W for the game and for this patch in this season, and I'm going to give some feedback about maybe we could consider opening it up to something else or putting something else similar into it. Before we do get going though guys, a quick word from today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Outplayed app. Outplayed is the ultimate video capturing app for gamers, allowing you to automatically capture your best in-game moments and biggest plays. For example, like finding my first unique item on the Diablo 4 PTR, Frostburn gloves, very nice. Felt so good to find a unique in World Tier 2, which is of course a new feature of this patch cycle for Diablo 4, and with Outplayed you will have these moments captured to share with friends or to use in your own content. Record your gameplay, edit it with the inbuilt video editor, share it all completely for free. Specifically to Diablo 4 is an absolutely fantastic interactive map with events, quests, all the kind of in-game information you could ever want. It's a really handy tool for players to use, and I did use it during the PTR cycle. Outplayed is a very impressive piece of software, so why not grab the app today by using the link in the description or the pinned comment completely for free, so you can record some clips, share them with clanmates, friends, or start your journey into content creation. Thanks again to Outplayed for sponsoring today's video. Awesome. Right, well, look, I'm a massive Diablo 3 player. That's the game that I love playing, so it is no surprise, I suppose, that in my opinion, the big W for this season is, of course, the Pit. The Pit is basically Greater Rifts, and when I'm playing this game mode, I actually feel like I'm playing a Diablo game. That's what it feels like to me, because Diablo to me has always been about the randomly generated maps and the random mob types that come. Of course, Diablo 2, you do get, fixed mobs and fixed zones. The map sometimes changes, sometimes doesn't. But Diablo 3, of course, is all about greater rifting, and you get those maps, nice juicy ones, lots of enemies, they flow really well, and it is just a massively fun time to play. Now, the great thing about Diablo 3 is you can start basically getting into the rifting system immediately at level 1. For Diablo 4, you've probably got to be about level 70 or 80. I haven't really jumped in until the late 80s because I just wasn't sure the character was going to be strong enough. My bad, I probably should have tried to do it earlier. But the point I'm getting at is out of all of the kind of like things to do in this game, so we've got the Helltides, which are certainly a lot more fun, but very, very chaotic, and after a few hours of Helltide, it gets quite boring because it is in essence just you're just doing the same thing. Now, obviously, I know some people will say, look, Greater Rifting is just the same, the Pit is just the same, it's the same activity. I would stress highly that even just the changing of the background and the changing of the mob types makes the game so much more fresh and interesting. The little subtle variations of that. One time I'm killing skeletons, the next I'm killing demons, the next I'm killing werewolves, whatever, snakes, bugs. That, I think, is quite important because you jump into Helltide and it is just like this kind of... It is fun, it is chaotic, the thing jumping out the ground, spewing monsters up is cool, the summoning of all the elite monsters is cool, the overpowered bar is cool, but it's just the same enemies over and over and over again, and I think killing the same enemies in essentially what feels like the same location over and over again, I think does lose its charm somewhat, albeit it is an activity that you can go and do for a bit. Then we've got Nightmare Dungeons. They play much better than they do on launch, because on launch they were terrible. I'd still say they're pretty crap, to be honest. They're still badly designed. There is still backtracking, albeit it has improved dramatically. I do not enjoy picking up things and taking them to pedestals. That is terrible game design. I do not enjoy pulling levers that are in traps. This is just not fun for me. So ultimately, Nightmare Dungeons, you do have to do some. They are mandatory in terms of ranking up your glyphs. They are mandatory potentially in terms of getting the actual keystones to run the pit levels, because I think that from looking online, Nightmare Dungeons is the best place to get your keystones. But they're just there's just not a patch on the pit. The pit is just far more fun. The mapping, the coding of it seems to be better. I still think it could be improved. The maps are certainly better than Nightmare Dungeons. They're not quite Diablo 3 level as of yet, and obviously in Diablo 3 sometimes you get bad maps, but overall there's like a really heavy weight into these nice juicy, battlefields, festering woods and that sort of thing. The pit, I think, could maybe benefit with a little bit of recoding with the maps. But ultimately, it's far more fun than doing Whispers, which is bounty runs. It's far more fun than doing Nightmare Dungeons. It's far more fun than doing Helltide. And it's far more fun than doing World Bosses, Legion, or Uber Bosses, in my opinion. It really, I think, should be the cornerstone of this game. Now, it is, in a sense, because the only way to get your masterworking materials is through the pit. This is how this game is going to work, I think, moving forwards. They've made it so much easier to get to level 100. Obviously, it's something I'm hoping to box off in the next, couple of days. Now I've got a bit more time to play. Your whole progression is finding better items with the greater affixes, potentially 2 or 3 greater affixes, then tempering onto those items, getting the exact tempering that you want, and then really investing in the masterworking and improving the stats of the item. You can only get the masterworking stuff from the pit. So 100 isn't the end of the game anymore. 100 is kind of like the launching point for your character, and the whole thing is about gear progression. So I'm pleased that the pit is going to have like a really big ongoing thing. But what I would say, from a casual dad can't play for like multiple hours a day, if we could get the pit earlier, if we could get something similar to the pit earlier, I think that would be a huge deal, because I think I could easily given up on this season. I could have got to like level 70, level 60, and just been like, well, yeah, the Helltides are better, but it's a little bit boring, as I said earlier, and I'm not feeling, this still doesn't feel like Diablo to me. It still feels like some kind of weird mishmash of Lost Ark slammed with a bit of World of Warcraft, slammed it with a little bit of Diablo, and I've just ended up not really fully getting into this like procedurally generated level. Now, obviously, you could have some kind of system like in Diablo 3 where there is the Rift and the Greater Rift. We could keep the pit as like the Greater Rift of Diablo 4, and you do have to get to like that later. It's the starting point at the end game to get into this system. But if we can have something randomly procedurally generated to like level in, I mean, you might say, well, that completely negates the point of Helltides and dungeons. There is going to be ways to balance these game modes around, but ultimately, when I play, I just want to come in, I want to just load up a random map, I want to just blast monsters, and I don't want it to be ultra repetitive like the Helltide. So, as I say, for me, massive W is the pit and how it works. Now, it seems as though there's probably not much point going past the tier 60, 61 at the moment. We need leaderboards for this stuff. Again, just to give us something to aim at, some reason to carry on progressing and to carry on pushing. Now, overall, there is tons of other benefits to this season. The item changes have been brilliant. Really have actually enjoyed upgrading the codex. That was so much smoother. Just getting those powers as you go, it's been brilliant. One thing I would say about items though, uniques feel pretty crap, to be honest. I've been using the unique that automatically casts Corpse Explosion, the Raised Skeleton and the Corpse Tendrils. I don't think I ever want to not play with that. It seems like such a fun item, and really I kind of wish all of the uniques were like that. They were really powerful. They did something super cool so that you are not forced to take them, but that they do something interesting and they do something unique that is really worthy of that name, because I feel like most of the ones that I find are extremely meh, and I'm probably not going to use them. And having looked up some build guides for the Necro, it doesn't really seem like anybody's overly using, maybe 1 or 2 here or there. So I still think there's work to go with the items. I'm not a massive fan of having to swap my entire gear out from World Tier 2 to World Tier 3. I'm not a massive fan of doing that again at World Tier 4. I'm not a massive fan of then having to wait for level 925 items. I kind of just feel like that's very, very forced, like, gatekeeping of stuff. Again, going back to Diablo 3, once you got to level 70, it takes a long time to get your gear good in that game, but the great thing is that after like maybe 4 hours of gameplay, literally just a ancient convention of elements with perfect stats could drop immediately. And that's what I like. I think keeping people interested and getting them to the end game, I'm really pleased they've made it faster. That's really, really good. But if we could just have a little bit more fun, I think, before we get to the pit, before we get to like level 80, 90, whatever. And I think one of the things, having the ability to drop anything at any time, personally for me, is more, because I'm a loot find kind of person. That's how I like playing these games. I like finding really, really cool items. So having that ability to get that, like, oh my god, this has dropped moment, I just don't really think we've got that at the moment, because particularly with the whole crafting system, we're essentially just finding bases over and over again, and then hoping that we can temper on the correct things, and hoping that we masterwork the correct things. And what that means is that instead of getting that, like, oh my god, I've dropped a Shaco kind of moment, which still will exist, you know, there will still be those amazing things there and thereabouts, but ultimately that's very, very, very rare. And I don't get the same sense of enjoyment out of going, oh wow, this base is potentially useful, but I've got to go through several steps to even find out if it works. Like a comparison I draw actually with Diablo 2 is, yes, it's nice to find bases in that, but ultimately the excitement from that comes from the runes that you're going to put into those bases. You know, think of the excitement when you find a jar rune or whatever. It's one of those absolutely, my god, this is a very rare drop, and I'm very, very happy with this. So again, going back, like the whole, I feel almost like up until 90, it's very hard to get excited about anything that drops. And I think that's something that perhaps could be addressed that would, you know, give me a bit more fun. So as I say, some form of pit system, some sort of rift system earlier on in the game, so that I can level my character a little bit, playing that super fun game mode of the randomly generated stuff, create some more like drop moments, perhaps a little less with the gear progression, but ultimately I think if you're going to spend a lot of time in this game, the loot chase of improving your character and gear is going to be a really, really good thing. It's going to take a long time, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pit runs to get the gear you want and to get it all maxed out. So there is something to do. Now, it might well be that after a couple of hundred pit runs it does get a bit tedious, but I do think there's probably enough in this game, with mixing in the Helltides, with mixing in the Nightmare Dungeons. The world bosses are a little bit of a fail at the moment. They just seem to get obliterated in like 60 seconds. So that, you know, whilst they look cool, again, it just feels a little bit like a chore. And I think ultimately this season would have been greatly improved with a season theme and a season quest line that, you know, that actually added something to the game. Now, that I think means that we've got actually a really solid base now for this game moving forwards as things stand. I think it's okay. You know, as I say, if we could add something a bit more randomly generated earlier on, that I think would help things. And then if you're going to put a banger season theme on top, so some kind of mode, some kind of activity, something that you get to do in the game on top of this, I really do think you're going to be in a very, very good spot. And obviously, as I say, season 4, the quest line, it's crap. It doesn't really do anything. It's not particularly much fun. But if you chucked like Delve from Path of Exile on this, you know, if you chucked, I don't know, maybe a different class of item that we've had like in Diablo 3, like the Ethereals, or a socketable gem like Soul Shards, something like that affects builds and stuff, I can see this game certainly growing a lot in popularity. I think it's won a lot of the player base back. I think there's a lot of people, I think, who are very, very positive about it. And if we could get the pit earlier, that would make a whole lot of sense. Right, that is my ramblings on Season 4. I have enjoyed it, I'd say more than I thought I would do, which is a positive for me. definitely a lot of things I would still fix in this game, but I think we are definitely on the road to recovery, and I think the future is potentially quite bright. I'm very excited to see what we're going to get next season. Hopefully some really banger stuff on top of what we've got, and I think we'll be quite happy with that. I've been Filthy Casual. Thank you again to Outplayed for the sponsorship. I will see you again in some videos soon. Take it easy, guys. Peace.